Good morning and welcome to another exciting Breakfast with Unity. This morning we're starting a little different than we usually do. I usually like to do from scratch stuff on most of my programs and stuff, but I've got a couple of pre-made scripts. If you want them, you can download the project in the description, and it'll have these scripts already added. The reason I'm doing this is because one of these scripts is kind of hard won, and I kind of came up with it when I was working on Vanguard V, and the other one's copy pasta. So you would have found this just on the internet as it is, and I've got the links here. So like the first script that I'm going to show you here is follow position physics, and this is verbatim from the links in the here, but I also have it pulled up already. So it's just a Unity Answers post about how to stop a rigid body at a target, and instead of just telling them how to stop it, is they actually go to the trouble of showing how to create an error feedback system is what this actually is, where basically if you're not at the location, it calculates the type of force that you would need to start moving towards that location with a certain amount of gain and error. And so this basically just moves an object to a position, and it's super awesome and is super useful script if you're doing physics stuff. The other one is basically the analog to this script. And this one I didn't find on the internet. I found this piece of it. I found this couple little pieces of information on how to get an object to rotate to a goal, basically. But this one just had the rotation to get there in one frame. I wanted to actually make it so the amount of force that you needed to slowly and smoothly move into this. So what I basically did was I took this script, copied it, pasted it in with this script, and started beating it up until it worked. And I basically just combined the concepts from here with the concepts from here, so that it uses the exact same inputs, but it gets you to a target rotation rather than to a target position. As I said, this was hard won. This was one of these ones where I don't actually fully understand the math myself. I just kind of put it in here and started playing with it until it worked. I'm not sure if it's optimal. I'm not sure if we need to have both these vectors. I seem to think that I seem to have thought that I needed them in the past, but I'm not sure. There were a few problems I ran into when I was working on it too. The particular object I was attaching it to did not have mass, and so I couldn't it didn't properly calculate the rigid body inertia tensors, so I had to add this force spherical tensor later. And inertia tensor just means, like, if you have an object this oblong and you apply force to like a portion of it, it will behave differently than an object that is like, cubic or spherical. And this just forces it to a spherical inertia tensor. It'll rotate the same on every axis when you apply force. And it says the center of mass is 0, and that just means it rotates around the center, and it sets the inertia tensor rotation quadrant identity. The inertia tensor rotation and the inertia tensor are used in conjunction to build what the inertia tensor actually is. So sorry for the by the seat explanation of what this stuff does, but yeah, go ahead and look into it and have some fun with it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to see how this stuff behaves real quick first. So, I'm just going to create a cube. And actually, no, let's make a sphere. But we need something that has a point at the end. So, I'm going to do a sphere. We're going to create a light. We're going to create a directional light. And I'm going to create a capsule. We're going to... Actually, let's just make another sphere. We'll just give it a little button nose. We'll do another sphere. We'll set the sphere to like 0.25, 0.25, and 0.25, and we'll move it forward in the z by 1. And that didn't do exactly what I wanted. Oh, 0.5 is what we want. 0.5 in the z. So now we have a little directional nubbin. Let's just elongate it a little bit. I don't know. Not that far. Alright, so at least we know where it's pointed. I'm just going to try and make it look a little bit more like a face. There we go. Alright, so we got a little nose pointed in the z direction so that we can see if the rotation stuff is working. So the second sphere, we're going to child to the first sphere. And what are we going to do with this? We're going to go ahead and attach both follow position physics and follow rotation physics. And then I'm going to create an empty game object in the scene that we're going to use as an example here. And I'm going to just rotate it some degree here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the sphere. And I'm not 100% sure if the default settings for the rotation are very good. Like, the default settings for the follow position is actually pretty good, but this I didn't readjust for spherical stuff. So we're going to just put this game object in as the target for both of these. So if we hit play, we'll see that it moved and started rotating very slowly to that position. So if we look at the game object here, it's actually not directly on the game object. But you can see that it kind of actually does a little bit of a floaty move to places. So it already looks pretty sci-fi with just the default settings. Now, the problem is, the reason that it's not actually up at this point is this script does nothing to counteract physics other than the amount of force that it would do to try and get to that position. And right now we have the sphere set up with gravity. So this is actually really awesome. Like, it is actually being affected by gravity. If we were to turn off the follow position, it will fall. So this is actually kind of cool that it works even in a gravity scenario, at least with these settings. Like, you might have to tweak the settings to make it good. If we turn to use gravity off, you'll see that it will float right to the goal and stay there. And that's because it doesn't have to counteract any forces. So so this is actually kind of cool. I think I'm going to leave the use gravity on just because it kind of makes it feel right. And it also means that we could, you know, if you shot this thing out of the air, you could literally just turn off this and it would all of a sudden, you know, start falling to the ground. So what are we going to do here? So this the rotation, let's change the settings a little bit. And I'm probably going to change the defaults too, just so that we don't have to worry about this in the future. So I ran into another problem too. Like, so it actually slowly rotates the position, right? If we do the if we set this thing up to be directly in front of us, like 5, and then we set the rotation here. You saw that it was moving to the rotation, but I found that if I was rotating to the exact opposite, it kind of just stayed there. It didn't know what to do. So there may be some edge cases that are not handled by the script yet, because as soon as I like move the goal even slightly, not slightly enough, it will start moving towards it. So I'm not sure exactly what that special case is. Now the thing is, the chances are that you're going to run into that special case in a game environment is actually pretty slim. Directly away is not a very common problem, but and at least not a very permanent one. But let's see if just tweaking some of the values will actually change that problem and get rid of it. So I want to make this thing rotate a little bit faster. So we're going to make it so that the so to velocity. So I'm going to just rotate this. I'm going to pause it, and we're going to rotate this. Whoops, not that one. We want to rotate. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter which one we rotate. So I'm just going to pause it, and we're going to hit play. And that's how slow it's rotating. Alright, so now I'm going to rotate it back. And what we're going to do is we're going to... I'm going to actually put the game view as at the same time as the scene view so that we can see when it's moving when I hit play. So now we're going to change some of these values. Let's try doubling the 2 velocity and see what that changes. Okay, so that's nicer. It tends to slow down a little bit too fast. So let's now rotate this thing out again. Let's pause it, rotate it, and see what another one of these values can do for us. So max velocity, we're probably not hitting that. Maybe we are. Let's see what happens if we do this, because this might be in degrees, in which case we're probably hitting it. Let's do 45 for the max velocity. Yeah, that didn't seem to change much, because I don't think we're actually reaching the max velocity anyway. So I'm going to put that back to 15, and let's rotate, pause, and rotate again. Oops, let's 180, let's put it that way. And let's try one of the other values. So max force is 40. That's probably fine. But just in case, let's go ahead and make this 100 and see what happens. So if we hit, if we unpause now, still looks about the same. It looked like it reached more acceleration a moment ago, but that's not big tell there. So I'm gonna rotate this back around. We'll put it to like 5 degrees or something. Pause it. Oh, we're already rotating naturally. So what I want to do now is let's try the gain. Let's try like making this double and see what happens. So if we hit pause now, so that makes it accelerate slower, kind of. These are all tweak values, and I'm sorry that I don't know exactly how they work. And this is part of the reason that we're playing with this stuff. And we're not doing anything interesting just yet, are we? Let's just really quickly make it so this thing follows us around in a kind of sort of interesting way real quick. And then you guys can play around with tweaking values later. See if you can get something rotating nicely. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a plane, create a 3D object plane. We're going to throw in our character controller from first person. Just put it up here. I'm going to make our plane bigger so that we can have more space to walk around. Not a whole lot bigger, just bigger. And we're going to, I'm going to go to this guy, and I'm just going to make it so, let's position our dude where we'd like him on the screen. So let's rotate him around. We don't need our main camera anymore because we already have one on this guy. Let's put him at 0, 0, 0 to make this easier first. And then let's put the sphere at like Z5. And we're going to go back to our first person controller, move him up enough that he won't fall through the world. And then we're going to move our sphere. We're going to rotate him around 180. And we're going to move him in the Y. And we're going to then move him over here. And then we're going to rotate him kind of towards us. Let's just grab the rotation tool and kind of give him a little bit of a look at us. There we go. And what we're going to do is I'm going to copy component, paste component values on its game object. Paste component values. So this is the follow target position. That's what I'm going to call it. And we're going to put this inside of our first person controller now, exactly where it's at. And so what should happen here is if we hit play, we've got a little robot that will follow us around and attempt to look at us. And he's not looking at us too fast here, but yeah, he'll always try and stay relative to where we're at and take a peek at us. And so if you wanted to have a little character kind of following you around, you can do this. This is also, the follow position stuff is also very similar to how man-hacks worked in Half-Life. The equation is probably identical, other than any basic Unity, like the way that it's set up for the terminology. So you'll notice it doesn't follow my my rotation of the head, and that's actually partially because we can actually fix that. If we put the target position inside of our main camera instead, that'll fix that. So now if we look up, he should also stay above us and stuff. So if you want to create a little character that tries to get your attention, you can just put him in the center of the screen and he'll totally try to annoy you at all times. So let's call that a show. Sorry that we didn't do much scripting real time on this one. Part of this show is to create useful stuff for people to use, and I think this falls under there. I can see a lot of uses for this in various types of games. And I figured that I was not going to be able to implement these on the show, and so and considering one of them is you can just find on the internet anyway, I just think that it's probably better to just have these scripts out there that people can use. So download the project, enjoy it. If you have any questions, please email me, pushypixels@pushypixels.com. You can also tweet me at Dragfire. We have a Patreon page. Check it out, Cooking with Unity on Patreon. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another Breakfast with Unity, bright and early at 8 a.m. PDT.